and overstep.
Okay, here we go.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to the first Overdose and Chill of 2022. I'm Yestin Keys. I'm the Managing Director for Overdose here in Southeast Asia and live from Singapore today. Very happy to welcome our first guest of the year. Great client of ours. We've been working together for a while now. Introducing you to George Lloyd, who is COO, CFO and co-founder of Whiskers N Paws, Hong Kong's premier pet care and lifestyle brand. Welcome, George.
Thanks, Easton. It's great to be here. So really glad that you made the time for us and that you want to start the year with Whiskers N Paws.
Awesome. So George and I are going to have a good chat today. But just for those of you watching, wherever you're watching, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff, which hopefully will be interesting to you guys, but please do get involved, drop us some questions, drop us some comments, and we can respond to those as we go. So George, I don't know whether to say, tell us about 2021 or tell us about what you're looking forward to in 2022.
Look, it's been an extraordinary couple of years for all of us now. We've just all been through such tremendous change. And whilst I'm sure there's sort of been an enormous number of challenges for a lot of people personally and also a lot of businesses, I think there are some, maybe some sort of lessons or silver linings in it. I think one thing for us is just, I guess, learning to adapt, to, of course, be committed to, what you believe in and your bigger vision, but also just play it day by day. And that's certainly, I think sort of a new way of thinking for us. And we're very optimistic, about the future. We're very optimistic about 2022. We've definitely got a lot of things we want to do. But we recognize that, it all happens one day at a time.
That's a good point, actually. I mean, you mentioned optimism there. We love working with you guys. It's it's a high energy brand, high energy team. It's a what I would call a good brand as well. It's here for the right reasons. What I probably didn't do was ask you to perhaps tell us a bit about Whiskers N Paws itself. So perhaps you could give us just the history and overview of the business.
Yeah, of course. And look, all the sort of hard work and inspiration, actually goes to my wife Vada, who created the brand about 13 years ago. But I think really it started well beyond that. It was sort of an idea that was sort of in her heart for a long time. And the idea, I think, was to try and, create a pet store that was definitely different to what everyone was familiar with. And really part of that is around recognizing the emotional role that pets play in our lives at home, but then also as a way of connecting us to our friends as well, especially in sort of large, high-density cities like Hong Kong, which is our home. And so it started with sort of big aspirations, but very sort of modest, very sort of humble beginnings. Being blessed that through sort of word of mouth and really generous customers that we've sort of been able to grow year upon year.
And I'm guessing some of those customers have been with you guys probably since day one, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And that's the way I think, we look at it. It's hard to sort of pick the right words, whether it's community, whether it's family, but, we're certainly, not a sort of transactional based business. We're really about forming relationships, building trust, establishing authority, and hopefully being a place that people can come to year in, year out, to sort of learn, how to care for their pets and really how to sort of create, a better way of living.
And that really plays out in the physical your flagship store, doesn't it? So obviously it's a big store, but at the same time you've got the kind of coffee shop, the services, what I would call the services, as opposed to just kind of on the shelf products. You've got that true kind of community and lifestyle vibe kind of happening in the flagship store, right?
Yeah. It's our I guess you could say sort of our approach has really been around to date a single flagship store, and I think it meets a number of different needs. It provides services such as grooming services. It provides carefully selected product range. We're not in sort of F&B business, but we do provide sort of a cafe service, really as part of that sort of community aspect, where our furry customers, are just as welcome as human customers, and the store on any day of the week is full of life, sort of people, and most often they're dogs, and occasionally cats and rabbits and other animals as well. Yeah.
Presumably, there's some segregation there, though, when they're all in there together, or do they all get along well?
Look, the store really has a great energy about it, and everyone who comes brings that energy with them. It's a great spirit, and it's also sort of a place where I guess people and sort of their pets learn to socialize. And so every now and again, it takes a little while for maybe the sort of the animals to sort of find their space, but there's always a sense of not just harmony, but also just a great energy, great enthusiasm, and really I think focusing on sort of creating a place, particularly in these times, where you can sort of step in the front door and sort of put aside other concerns, and really just be present with a bunch of like-minded people and just really share a great afternoon together. So it usually runs very, very smoothly. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting point as well, right? Because what you've just described then in terms of that relationship between the brand, your reason for being a business in terms of both what you stand for and the products you sell, your customers, furry or otherwise. I'm sure there are other kind of OD clients out there who are kind of early enterprise, ambitious like you guys. But you seem to have already really nailed that secret sauce in terms of your brand, in terms of what you stand for, what you truly mean beyond just a transactional level. Was there any secret sauce to that you can share, or is it more of a kind of longer evolution?
Yeah, look, I mean, I have to really give credit to Vada, and that there's no secret sauce. It's just I think it's an example of a business that was born out of passion, and that it's resonated with people, and that it's sort of able to sort of continue to grow and go forward as a business. It all comes from that passion, and I think with that is a real sincerity around wanting to serve customers, and definitely that's just absolutely critical. That's who we're here for, and an authenticity. Both in terms of the way we live, what's important to us, and we've certainly got a very big household with lots of pets, and so I think it's just that really strong alignment between what we do at work and what we do out of work.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, maybe I'll go off on a tangent now, but there's obviously a lot of discussion around this generally in the world of business and brands these days, and perhaps historically people would have advocated some level of separation between your outside of work and work, and I think actually you guys are quite an example where if those things are aligned in the right way, it actually creates something really genuine and powerful.
I mean, I believe so, but how do you do it? I don't know how you do it, right? I think as I said, I think this was started through following a path of passion and personal inspiration, through a passion to serve as well.
And how? So obviously, huge, really strong basis in what we would call traditional retail. Very kind of grounded foundation in the category, as it were, in the space. At what point did you guys decide to, I guess, start to sell via online? What was the thinking there?
Yeah, look, I think it's been a very organic journey for us. So the business has started around 13 years ago. I think there's always sort of a nascent sort of online presence, but not really sort of carefully curated, and really more as a sort of complementary part of the business, not a core part of the business. And then I think that would have changed around 6 years ago. Why did it change? I think there are a number of drivers there. I think, of course, we're influenced by the broader environment, and that's business environment, but also lifestyles, and again, sort of the ways that customers want to be served. With our store and with our category, certainly services, you have to come in, to utilize our services. But then amongst our products, there's some quite large, quite bulky items, some heavy items, and I guess the lifestyle we lead now, it's sort of less and less patience for sort of carrying them out into the car park and putting them in the boot, especially in a city which is so high density, a city like Hong Kong, and increasing expectations that at least those bulky and heavy items, if not everything, can be delivered to the home. So I think it was a response to just how to better serve people, and I don't think that that was a sort of demand that was unique to us. Of course, we've just seen so much transformation across so many different businesses, and then I think increasingly we're sort of seeing a slightly different change, a change in the way that people sort of look at going to a physical store, and just what their expectations are there as well. The online channel is so efficient, does such a great job of delivering product, and certainly meeting those sort of transactional needs, but the physical experience meets a whole lot of other needs, and so we're just trying to sort of serve the customer in as many ways as possible, and again really sort of create that experience that whenever we can assist them, whether it's when they're out on a Saturday afternoon, or whether it's at the evening, in the evening at home, that we're just able to be there for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you're describing is a truly omni-channel approach, right? It's interesting because often parts of the industry get quite fixated on a fairly binary, traditional retail's dead, it's all about online, or online retail's dying, it's all back to traditional retail. And I think a lot of brands are perhaps missing the point that the two are very much complementary.
Yeah, look, I'm not a retail expert, despite sort of being in the industry, I guess you could say. But I think we've all observed, whether it's sort of our personal experience and the way our shopping habits have changed, that retail has changed radically, and even just the last sort of 2 or 3 years, especially with what we've all been experiencing, and I think it sort of continues to change and continues to sort of redefine itself, but it's really much more around I think that's sort of creating an experience, and sort of where does the sort of offline element of the business sort of meet those needs. And sort of we find that it's around education, it's around sharing knowledge, and then it's also around a sense of being connected into a community and meeting like-minded people, and so I think both online and offline are very complementary in that way. It's the same customer, it's just a different context.
And for you guys, where as you mentioned before, the physical. I mean, I would almost argue physical products and services in terms of the grooming and other kind of in-store services where you bring your pet in store and that's where you engage with the service. How you kind of, or how do you envisage that moving forward from an omnichannel perspective? Because there's a school of thought that says certain things will forever be physical, and obviously to an extent that's true, but there are also ways of starting to reflect those things online, or starting to extend them online.
Yeah. Look, I think, I mean, I guess sort of looking back a little bit, it did seem some years ago that, online and offline was sort of quite binary. And there was a sense that online was going to completely overtake offline. There's sort of maybe a sense of doom amongst physical retailers. And even just the term bricks and mortar, it doesn't really have a sense of sort of innovation, creativity, and adaptability attached to it. It's sort of quite the opposite. But I think there's sort of, as the cycle turns, there's a much stronger convergence of the two now, and it's really increasingly difficult to differentiate between the two experiences. It's really more a continuity, both in terms of the ways you interact and who you interact with. There are many similarities, in terms of the digital experience and the physical sort of, present in-store experience. And I think that's something that's just, still being defined. Every day there are just new ways that, many sort of really amazing and innovative businesses are sort of, adapting or innovating, and really sort of creating new ways to bring the two together. We're just sort of navigating our way through, and sort of very much learning a lot as we go. I think that this process, it is very incremental. I think it's very hard to sort of, have a grand design. And I think also it's very much a process of trial and error, and I think one thing that's sort of, really interesting about sort of more the sort of digital side of the business is an ability to be a lot more playful, a lot more experimental, and then you really, the customers decide, what resonates.
So I would say actually though, and certainly amongst our Southeast Asia clients, as you said, it's a process of discovery. But certainly you guys are, you're out there in front, I would say, in terms of actually kind of, grappling this notion and this idea of, how do we look at things that are either inherently physical or inherently digital, and then start to kind of push them in both directions. What about you personally? I mean, what else have you seen out there, whether it's in the same category as you guys or whether it's in a completely different category? What have you seen out there that you've started to draw inspiration from? Or just anything you thought that's been done really well, and that's maybe something we might look at.
Yeah, look, I mean, the one thing that I find really interesting for myself and my own sort of personal shopping habits is the sort of the concept of sort of curation around my specific needs or my specific lifestyle. I think that there are, of course, the sort of the very, very large, very efficient platforms, and I think what they do is just amazing. But I'm really enjoying sort of those that are sort of really more a mid-scale, not a boutique, but have a feel like a boutique. And so I think it's around that sort of personalization, and it's around sort of a balance, between sort of guiding people through a relevant journey, but not being too structured. Still giving them some discretion to sort of explore and discover. I think this is where some people are sort of getting it wrong a little bit online, is that they're sort of taking out the process of discovery from shopping. That sort of serendipity of I don't know what I'm looking for until I see it, and so I find that some of the the stores that I really enjoy visiting sort of get the balance right. I think they sort of create a, or curate sort of a, within a particular sort of, I guess sort of lifestyle theme, but within that, they're not too prescriptive. They give you room to sort of discover, the elements of that theme or the elements of that lifestyle in your own way, in your own time. So I think that's, what I enjoy, brands that really sort of resonate at a more personal level, rather than just sort of a pure transactional level. I think it depends what I'm shopping for, of course.
So thanks, George. So if anyone who's just joining, this is Overdose and Chill, live from Singapore and Hong Kong. So our first one of the year. So thanks for joining us. With me today is George Lloyd of Whiskers N Paws. Please keep the questions coming in. We're live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook today, so do get involved. So we have got a question actually. This is from Raven. So really good one. I think we would have got to this as well. So this is a good one. But did you notice an influx in pet adoption during the last year, considering the mental health of many people during 2021? And if so, how did that impact your strategy?
Yeah, look, I think. The short answer is yes. I think it's sort of widely discussed, and it's been sort of pretty clearly observed that there has been an increase in pet adoption over the last year or so. But I'm reluctant to sort of attribute it just to, I guess, the pandemic, just to events of the last year. I think it's actually just a sort of an acceleration of something that's been in place for a long time. I think there's a real, I think, change in the relationship, that we have with animals generally, and certainly there's enormous awareness. Particularly I've got young children, and sort of the awareness among sort of young children around the environment and ethical treatment of animals and these sort of similar important issues. But I think also at home, there's a real difference in terms of the way we engage with animals, and specifically with pets, and the way we look at them. And more they are a part of the family in a very, very literal sense. The emotional connections are very strong. I think that without sort of going too deeply into why or these sort of things might occur, but it does seem that there's maybe not just a correlation with pandemic, but correlation with our addiction to our smartphones. And that in a way there's sort of less and less direct personal connection in the workplace. We want more and more personal connection in the home, and connecting with any sort of animal does is very fulfilling in that way, in terms of experiencing in all directions, a sense of compassion, a sense of kindness and resilience, which I think often animals are great examples for us in terms of when we get knocked down, to sort of pick ourselves up and keep going. Examples of just pure acceptance,
yeah.
I think that really, I think it's sort of a core belief, of the business. And as I said, just the way we live is that we have so much to learn from animals, and they just contribute so much to our lives, but in a really, really rich way. So I think, yes, you can observe there's been that trend, but I think it's a long-term trend. I think it's something that sort of existed well before last year. It's just that it's accelerating.
And you mentioned, we talked then about the role of community and the role of pets and animals within I guess, within micro communities, within families. Going back to the work that Whiskers N Paws does, or the community of Whiskers N Paws, what we haven't covered perhaps is what you guys actually do outside of the store across Hong Kong in terms of, I guess, causes and kind of animal and pet related communities? I know you guys are pretty active. Perhaps we can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think just I'd like to sort of say that I don't think it's so much what we do. You know, I think, you know, we're sort of fortunate that, you know, we've been able to create a platform, and so it's really, you know, what we facilitate. You know, it's that, you know, we really see that platform as an opportunity to sort of, you know, really support other people as well, and to sort of really, you know, again, keep building that community and to, you know, really enable other people that are doing so much good work to just do even more good work. So, I mean, I think really look at it from that point of view that, you know, it's not what we're doing, you know, it's what we're facilitating, you know, and it's how we're connecting other people. And we're sort of enabling them to achieve more of what's important, you know, in their particular, you know, passion or charity or business or whatever it is that they might be doing. And I think that this is very much, you know, a core part of, you know, the way we think. I think this is also, it goes back to that omni-channel experience. You know, this is sort of, you know, where you can, you know, start to make, you know, so many different connections, you know, through the online ecosystem, not just that sort of direct business to customer connection, but you know, customer to customer, customer to charity, business to charity, you know, cause or topic to an audience, and that's I think something that's really interesting and something that you know is really in its early days, you know, and I think that's sort of something that, you know, we're incredibly curious about and sort of really fascinated by and really excited, you know, to see, you know, what we can do to sort of develop. So initially, you know, when I sort of talk about our platform, I guess it was a physical platform. You know, we sort of have always supported adoption in Hong Kong and particularly, you know, some of the local rescue agencies here, you know, made our space available for them to help find homes for their rescued animals. But, you know, now we're not limited by the physical platform. You know, now it's, you know, a much larger platform with, you know, many more nodes, many more points of connection, and yeah.
And that's an interesting one, actually. So we talked about Hong Kong, and then you talked about the online platform, I guess, allowing you to have reach beyond that physical presence. Have you guys thought about expansion beyond? I mean, I'm sure you do have customers outside of Hong Kong anyway, but have you thought about a more concerted expansion beyond Hong Kong at all? Is that something that interests you?
Look, I mean, we've got a, you know, huge amount of work on, and we're really enjoying what we're doing, and so, you know, whilst it's sort of, you know, always great, you know, to dream, we're sort of very focused on just, you know, making the most of today and then tomorrow as well. And so that's really where our focus is, you know. You know, outside of that, I think we've created something that is a bit unique, that is different. You know, and so maybe at some point it'll be interesting to explore. You know, I think, you know, when you look at Southeast Asia, which is our home, we're in Hong Kong. You know, it's often talked about as a region. It's you know, quite a sort of fragmented region, you know, with a lot of you know, individual countries and you know, large cities, but each with their own character, each with their own culture. So, you know, for now, it's there's just so much right in front of us and just so much that excites us in Hong Kong. That's really where our focus is.
It's interesting though. There's definitely, I mean, high density living is kind of thematic of a lot of certainly a lot of Southeast Asian cities. You know, certainly fur babies are huge in Singapore as well, and obviously Hong Kong and Singapore, you can see a few parallels. So yeah, I can certainly see how it would easily travel across borders. Talking of fur babies, a couple of questions here. So this is from someone watching on LinkedIn. How many pets do you own, and what are their favorite WMP treats or service? Please tell us about them.
Yeah. So at the moment, our household is 2 dogs and 2 cats, and an aquarium with sort of a couple of dozen fish. And it's always been like that. We've always loved filling our home with animals, and with 2 young children as well. It's often a crowded home, but it's always fun. What do they enjoy? Look, I think we take our dogs to work quite often, and so I think they feel just as much at home at the office or in the store as they do anywhere else, and they go to meet their friends. They sort of go there to also meet other dogs, connect, have fun. We've got a number of dogs in the office, and so I guess it's sort of a real sort of place for them to get out, burn off some energy, and express themselves. So I think it's just, again, it's the environment. It's the environment. Yeah.
And the second question for this person: what upcoming plans does WNP have for fur parents to look out for to strengthen the community of pet lovers in Hong Kong?
Yeah. Look, we've got a lot of plans, and really, it's just a question of how quickly can we sort of work through them. I find you've got to sort of always sort of have this sort of sense of momentum. The sort of your business is never done. You're always working on it. There's always new things. And sometimes it's really about fine-tuning the small details. Sometimes you sort of reach these points where there's sort of a moment for significant transformation. I guess one of the sort of bigger changes that we're looking at in the short term, is something that you've been enormously helpful with, is we use Shopify Plus and sort of moving onto the Shopify Plus Dawn theme, which is a major upgrade to Shopify, and something that we're really excited about. And then the other thing though is just this constant obsession with how do we just provide better service? How do we better understand our customer needs? How do we do a better job of meeting them? And that becomes somewhat of an obsession, and find that often that is it's a job of moving forward in millimeters. Every day just a little bit better. But that commitment to being a little bit better every day. So there's a balance. There's always a balance between that sort of fine tuning, that constant improvement, and every now and again sort of taking some bigger, bolder steps. But the big step in our pipeline at the moment is moving across to the Dawn theme.
And another question: Whiskers N Paws provides a great space for pet lovers in the Hong Kong community. What is the best thing about the Hong Kong spirit that you've come across when it comes to the pet community?
I think Hong Kong's a very unique city, and it's always had a great spirit, great energy, very sort of adaptable and resilient. I think that, the one thing, I find is just a sense of stepping out and making the most of the day, and particularly during this time, as a sort of a city in Southeast Asia, people, I guess, frequently travel, but we're all traveling less and less frequently these days. And so it's coming together with your pet, and stepping out and enjoying just the amazing nature that surrounds Hong Kong, the amazing beaches and waterways, hills, great swimming, great hiking, great paddling. And just, I think that, that's probably the biggest thing over the last year, is just the the extent to which people and dogs just go everywhere together and do everything together, from dining and enjoying coffee to hiking and swimming.
I think that's one thing I've always kind of looking northwards to Hong Kong from Singapore, one thing I've always been very envious of is the hiking. We have a hill here, but it's not quite the same as the ones that you guys have got.
Yep.
Do you, is that something you do? Is that a weekly, monthly thing for you guys?
Oh, look, it's not monthly. It's, if we could, it would be daily. I mean, of course, we don't quite do it that consistently. I mean, for myself, I've always sort of, had a love for the outdoors. From the age I could walk, and I definitely need my dose of nature frequently. So yeah, for us, lots of hiking. And our dogs love hiking, and we love sharing hikes with them. And then also personally, just lots of time in the water. So I think that sort of balance between sort of work and play, the intensity and excitement of a high density city, but then also just being out amongst the beautiful waterways and the beautiful hills that we have in Hong Kong.
This brings me nicely to my next question. Actually, I was going to ask you, how do you, and maybe this is a little different for you, because obviously the business is very much your passion as well. But when you do need to decouple from work or de-stress, what are your kind of go-tos? And it sounds like hiking and swimming, and obviously time with the pets.
Yeah.
But
getting outside, and in any form is great. I mean, my personal passion is paddling. I spend a lot of time on the water, and I do a little bit on the surf ski, but what I really enjoy is called prone paddling. It's sort of like a larger sort of 12-foot surfboard and doing open water paddling. So we've got great waterways in Hong Kong, and 2-3 times a week I'll sort of be on the water at the crack of dawn, and just I find that sort of spray of water on the face just really wakes me up. It wakes me up really deeply, and I love it.
And when you say prone paddling, that's not with like a paddle on a paddleboard? That's paddling.
It's on either stomach or knees. It's with the hands. Right. So it's the old style paddling. Yep.
Oh wow, that sounds like hard work.
It's close to the water, right? It's just this, you can't. I mean, aside from swimming, that's the only thing that gets you closer. So that's what's really fantastic about it, is that just direct, connection to the water.
Awesome. And how, talking of this, this space of, I guess, kind of wellness and so on, you guys have got, I mean, certainly the team that we do with, it's a big team, and I'd imagine the wider organisation, there's probably a whole bunch of other folks. I'm sure you've got a lot of staff at Whiskers N Paws. What have you guys kind of done through the pandemic to, I guess, to support those guys? And I'm sure there's been some disruption with retail being closed, retail open again, working from home, come back to the office again. So certainly in Singapore, it's very much been a kind of on-off for a couple of years now. But what tactics have you found that have helped the team get through that?
Yeah, look, I think it's it's just trying to be mindful of that responsibility that we have to each other, and sort of also I think sort of being sensitive that everyone's sort of gone through their ups and downs over this period. So just really, I think also just sometimes being a little bit more mindful of other people and just where they might be, maybe giving them a little bit more space if they need it. So I think it's really more, particularly in terms of, the team, it's just how we sort of work well together and how we support each other, how we look after each other. And part of that is, of course, flexibility, around working from home. There have been periods where we've had sort of a more rigid sort of roster, but I think really, around, letting people sort of take responsibility for themselves as well, and having that sort of flexibility and trust that the job still gets done, wherever we are. You know, for some people, work from home works really well. For others, it doesn't. So not being too rigid, you know, has been one of the key things. You know, in terms of sort of, you know, sort of more the sort of practical precautions. I think also just being diligent. Sorry, I had an incoming call. Just being diligent, you know, and that's just that everyday discipline, you know, in terms of, you know, we've sort of just stepped up our sort of cleanliness and hygiene sort of practices, you know, made sure that our spaces are very well ventilated, you know, sort of being aware of social distancing. You know, just again, that consistency, I think, is the key. And by now, you know, these are well-drilled habits. You know, we've all adapted. You know, it's sort of part of our lives.
So for the folks joining us now, this is Overdose and Chill. I'm Yestin Keys, and with me today is George Lloyd of Whiskers N Paws, Hong Kong. You can catch this on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and do keep the questions and comments coming. Obviously, more than happy to respond, so do get involved. So that's interesting, George. I think, you know, we talked a bit earlier about your love of the outdoors, and that's something that I guess, you know, you've had from an early age. I mean, perhaps you can tell us a bit about your career journey to date, because presumably that started originally in Australia, right?
It did. I mean, I grew up in Sydney and was educated in Sydney. But you know, it's honestly, it's been a really interesting career journey. It's been a bit random at times. You know, it's sort of been, you know, led more by I guess passion than by necessarily sort of a clear plan. But I always had that desire for adventure and to get out and to experience different parts of the world. Always, you had that natural curiosity that I had to feed. So you know, from shortly after my university days, I've you know, been traveling, and you know, I've spent time in sort of a few different continents, but mostly in Asia. You know, and often in sort of frontier Asia, or in more remote parts of countries like Indonesia and Mongolia. So, you know, I've sort of along that way, you know, the thing that I've really enjoyed the most is the people, you know, that I get to meet, the people I get to work with, and the relationships that I build. You know, particularly when you are, you know, doing that in a really, you know, different sort of geographic or different cultural context, you know, I just find it sort of, you know, really, really exciting. You know, often challenging, often I'm completely lost. I have really no idea sort of what I'm doing and sort of, you know, where I stand in sort of a particular situation. But you know, it's just that sort of openness and that patience, and sort of through that, you know, I feel blessed that I've got, you know, many great friends sort of throughout, not just back in Australia, but sort of throughout Asia as well. But yeah, I've been on the move until I guess I called Hong Kong home around 12 years ago. You know, up until recently, sort of still traveling frequently out of Hong Kong, but you know, Hong Kong is my home today.
And what have you observed over those 12 years in terms of, because, you know, Hong Kong is an iconic city, you know, it's a constantly evolving city. I mean, what have you kind of observed over those 12 years? I mean, that's a good chunk of time to, you know, be in one place and kind of see how things develop.
Yeah, you know, I think that you know, certainly in the pet space, one thing I've seen is just the really expanding sort of welcoming sort of pets into Hong Kong, and sort of you know, I think really big change in lifestyles, and not just pets at home, but pets, you know, in all public places as well. So, you know, I think that's sort of, you know, something that's happening in all high density, all major cities. and it's certainly something that's being embraced here. You know, I think sort of from another perspective, you know, the thing I really sort of find fascinating about Hong Kong is it's this incredible juxtaposition. You know, this sort of modern cosmopolitan city. You know, very fast moving, very exciting, but still, I think has a lot of respect for its traditional roots. You know, still a strong, you know, I guess you could say sort of Cantonese or southern China sort of feeling to, you know, many parts of the city. And that gives it a real richness, you know, as you sort of walk from one part to the next, you know, just how frequently it changes.
Yeah, no, it's a great city. It's a great city. Probably coming on to the home straight now. I think one other thing I wanted to ask you, obviously, you know, we've been working together for just almost exactly a year now, which has been awesome to partner with you guys. Yeah. And, you know, we've obviously been on a journey, and as you said, you know, we've got a new site coming with you. So really excited to see that launch later this year. And obviously also, yeah, I guess it's excited to see what the brand can do on a kind of newer Shopify 2.0 platform. But what for similar, I say similar, but for kind of other business owners who might be watching, you know, perhaps a bit earlier in the online journey than you guys, who are, you know, maybe they're thinking about, you know, moving their Shopify license to Plus, or, you know, maybe they're really starting to see some online growth. Do you have any kind of any words of wisdom for those guys, having, I guess, kind of or looking back on your own journey with Whiskers N Paws?
Yeah, look, I think I think for us it's just been a constant learning journey, you know, and you know, we've never had a single perfect solution, and there's never been a sense that, okay, we'll build it and that's it. We don't need to touch it for the next 3 years. You know, I think that there's just an incredible pace of change in terms of what is available and how you can do things, and particularly for smaller businesses. You know, the sort of things that, you know, you'd regard as just completely unavailable to a small business only 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. You know, things that you might say were only sort of available in you know, huge platforms like SAP, are now available, you know, on your smartphone, you know, with just a single simple download. So it really expands, you know, what you're able to do and how you're able to do it. I think that though it's a constant process of just discovering and rediscovering and testing those frontiers of your business. You know, I think one thing for us is, I think look at it partly as an incremental journey. You know, I think, and as you do that, sort of try to stay flexible. You know, and I think, you know, this is, I think, a lot of the, you know, sort of dilemma these days that we all face, is the sort of that balance between sort of trying to put together a collection of best of breed apps, for example, or sort of committing to a larger platform, you know, and there are pros and cons to both, and it's very hard to know what is the best. But I think particularly in an Asia, in a region, I should say, like Southeast Asia, where we've got, you know, many different business and cultural influences, I think, you know, that sort of ability to always stay flexible is important, you know, to you know, not invest too much in being too rigid, but you know, it's never ending, you know, particularly when you're looking at sort of compatibility across different platforms, how to share data across different platforms, you know. And then I think for us, one of the sort of one of the biggest learnings at the moment is that once you're on these platforms, the data is there, you know. Everything you do goes through one of these platforms. So then the biggest learning is to sort of really, I think, understand what is the value of that data, I mean, it's valuable for sure, but how do you realize the value that's there? You know, you can definitely be overwhelmed, you know, and you can definitely go too far into sort of looking at too many things. You know, it's that sort of, I guess the saying is, you know, trying to filter the signal from the noise.
Yeah.
And then from a more practical sense, how do you integrate that data? How do you bring it together? And how do you really sort of, you know, have a good sort of analytics, maybe platform is the right word, but a good approach to running effective data analysis. And that's challenging, and that's not just a technology issue. I think it's also a sort of a human resources issue, you know, in that, you know, for many of us, this is sort of a new frontier, and we've all got a lot to learn. You know, some of us are sort of stronger with data and, you know, more statistically or mathematically minded. But for a lot of people, it's not very intuitive either. So, you know, I think the way we look at businesses and the way we run businesses and the things that we follow are changing very, very quickly. And it's fun trying to keep up, but it's a challenge. It's a constantly changing challenge.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. One more question from Farid. Well, there's two questions here actually, but I'll start with the first one. Do you foresee any challenges in making the community grow due to never-ending COVID variants, and how that will affect the store experience? So things like grooming and events and so on. I mean, is that kind of a contingency of planning for, you know, what if this is the new normal?
Yep. Look, I think that I think, you know, without sort of diving into the reasons why, you know, and again, as I said, I think that yes, you know, 2021 did see a, you know, maybe an acceleration of the adoption of pets, but I think the underlying change was there already. You know, I think the other sort of massive lifestyle shift that a lot of us have experienced is less traveling. And so in the absence of that, you know, we're sort of looking in on, you know, how do we replace that time that we used to spend traveling? And so I actually think that, you know, I don't sort of, you know, look at that as a challenge. You know, I really look at that as, you know, people that are now naturally looking for being more connected to their local community. And so the challenge for us is just being relevant, you know, being valuable, you know, in one way or another, meeting people's needs, you know, and that's that they're the questions that every business needs to ask itself. It's just a matter of, you know, what business they're in and how they're going about answering those questions. So definitely there's, you know, been a big change in lifestyle, and I think, you know, we're all redefining, I should say, what it means to be connected to our communities and connected, you know, in a sort of a personal sense to the people around us.
Yeah. I do like that idea, actually. I mean, obviously, yeah, traveling has been non-existent, and there's some aspects of traveling that I guess can be missed, but at the same time, you know, it sounds like, you know, previously you would have spent a lot of time traveling in the region, and certainly I've got friends who previously would have, you know, 40% of the time would have been on the road, well, or in the air. And I think, yeah, it's a really nice opportunity that if you're not doing that, then all of a sudden you start to look around your own surroundings and start to think about how you can engage more, you know, where you are, as opposed to kind of constantly being somewhere else. So maybe that's a good thing that will come out of the pandemic. One last question. Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, I mean, just speaking personally, you know, but I don't think I'm unusual at all. But, you know, my lifestyle has changed incredibly, and, you know, I can sort of look at some things that I've lost if I want to, but I've also gained some tremendous things as well. And you know, so you know, we, as I said at the start, you know, we keep adapting and really sort of embrace the opportunities.
Exactly. But talking of gains, Farid also wants to know, how many can you bench press per day?
I mean, really, honestly, I haven't been counting. You I like to get outside, and I've got a good bunch of friends, and we do a few crazy things together. But I really like to get my exercise outside, and so I haven't really been sort of pushing the sort of the barbells or the dumbbells. Sometimes I might do something ridiculous, like sort of pick up a rock or a sandbag, but I don't know.
Sandbags are great, actually, aren't they? I've got one of those. There's something more satisfying just kind of lugging one of those around than just sort of lying on a bench. But we digress. Well, listen, George, it's been great to have you. Some really insightful stuff there, both at a business level and obviously from your own perspective as a human. So thanks very much for taking the time to chat to us. And thanks everyone for listening to this, our first OD and Chill of 2022. So have a great weekend ahead, George. Hope you get some hiking in. Hope you get some family time in. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you on Slack sometime soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for the invitation and for sort of making this happen, and for choosing Whiskers N Paws for the first session for the year. It's been a really great year working with Overdose, and I think we've just covered so much ground together. It's constantly challenging. Every now and again, as you sort of go out and try to sort of define what you want to become, it's that, as I said, it's the process of trial and error. But through that, I think we've really achieved a lot. So it's been great to join you this morning. It's also been great working with your team over the last year.
Yeah, no, thank you and certainly on behalf of the team as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've loved working with you guys, and definitely looking forward to another exciting year.
Yep, excellent. Thanks,
Great.
Lloyd.
Thanks, George. Have a great day.